Hello, everyone. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the tree of life and how this is incorporated into our consciousness and the interconnection between the wisdom of the tree of life and the world religions. Welcome to Modern Sages Podcast.
I'm Jenn Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now.
I'm so excited. This is going to be such an amazing conversation. But as always, before we get started, we wanted to share some of our favorite teas and the benefits behind them. So today we wanted to talk about London Fog, which is such a beautiful tea. When I was with Candace last time, we had that for breakfast in the morning, and it was just such a perfect place to just sit on the couch and to just chat and to drink this amazing tea. So what comes within that is we made that tea from the Earl Grey tea, which has so many amazing benefits, as do all the teas that you always hear from us.
Yes.
Some of my favorite parts of what Earl Grey brings in is it boosts the immune system, which of course, especially during this time of the year, is always something that we're looking for. Especially once, the seasons are changing and winter is coming, it's always nice to have additional support instead of having to rely on medications and things like that to fight away colds. I love this tea because it's also very detoxifying. So it helps clear out anything that's stuck inside of that's stuck inside of your digestive tract, anything
your
like
arteries.
That. It's a great way to detox. It helps improve your heart. Just, it helps with the circulation. It helps bring things into that circular motion to clear anything, all those blocks out, all of that stuff. So, there's so many things. It improves your digestion. It helps boost energy. Oh, there's
Got
so
a little
many amazing.
Yes,
amazing.
Has a little
benefits.
Caffeine boost, not too much.
Which, it's always nice to have a little extra in your day.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I ended up I'm not drinking coffee anymore, and I transferred over to teas. And I usually will have Earl Grey tea every morning with my almond milk. And the London Fog has lavender and vanilla syrup for the sweetener. And so when I always use non-dairy milks, because a lot of people believe that you need to have dairy in your diet in order to access calcium and to build strong bones, and to have additional protein into your diet. It's actually the opposite. It actually strips your bones of calcium. It creates inflammation and mucus in the body. And so I've personally do not drink milk. I try not to have dairy products in my diet because of that. And so I use almond milk, and I ended up getting this frothing machine that's fantastic from Amazon that makes the most beautiful foam. And but I'll mix that with my Earl Grey tea and a little bit of lavender and vanilla syrup, and it's just fantastic. The key things about making herbal teas, and this is a rule across the board for everyone who's listening. Whenever you're dealing with black teas or woodsy kinds of teas, you want to steep that with, you boil your water and you steep your tea bag in that water for 3 minutes. So my Earl Grey, I always set the timer on my stove and for 3 minutes to make sure that it's perfectly brewed. If you're using things like more herbaceous kinds of teas like rose petal or spearmint or lemon balm or red raspberry tea leaf, when you're using regular tea leaf teas, that you want to steep for 5 minutes as an overall rule. The only thing that I've noticed is a little bit different is hibiscus. Hibiscus, I do not steep for 5 minutes. I steep it for strong. 3. It gets too strong. But in general, if it's leafy or if it has petals, if it's flowers, that's 5 minutes. if it is a black tea or if it is woodsy, then that is 3 minutes of steeping time.
And Earl Grey, that is a black tea.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And
Yeah.
it has bergamot essential oil, which is an orange essential oil. So it smells amazing.
Oh,
Smells amazing.
yes.
Yes.
I need to invest in that because when we had it, it was so amazing and so magical. And so I love when all of the herbal teas that we've talked about are so great with inflammation, is because we don't drink enough water. A lot of times we're drinking soda, we're drinking all kinds of drinks that are causing more inflammation in our body. And so a great way to fight that, of course, drink lots of water, but herbal teas is a great way to help combat that, especially if you want to
Exactly.
get off of those high caffeine drinks. Switch over to some kind of herbal tea. I promise you. You might feel a little bit of a lull for a moment, but it's so much better for you.
It really is. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yay. Well, let's dive into the tree of life and all of the goodness that comes in with it.
Mm. Gosh, I've always had such a connection to trees. Trees bring me so much peace, so much happiness. I mean, one of my favorite things in the world to do in this life is to walk in the woods and to spend time among the energy of the trees. The trees have a consciousness,
Yes.
and you can connect them with their energy. They talk very slow.
Yeah, I remember when we taught Reiki, I was in your Reiki class, we went out to the trees and it was like you really have to like
Slow.
calm your energy to fill
Yes.
into the tree system,
Yes.
but it's so beautiful.
It is, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
Trees have an ability to help you stay grounded. They help you bring things into perspective. If you're really caught up in drama in your life, they will help you see what's really, really important in your life. They help you stay here and stay centered. It's like you'll look at the whole situation, the drama, or the things that are going on. You'll be able to look at it from the perspective of a tree. Like, does this really matter
Yeah.
in the long term? Does it really matter? What matters in life? And so that's what I love about that time, because it just brings me to a very centered place. I'm like, you know what? I need to disengage and I need to
Absolutely.
really focus on what's really important.
Well, and I
And
find
we all need that sometimes.
absolutely. And I find that throughout a lot of the world religions, even in ancient times, is there's always some kind of symbolism that's connected to the tree.
Mhm.
Even thinking about who was it, Buddha, who was sitting by a fig tree? Is that what it was?
That was a Bodhi tree.
A Bodhi tree. Okay.
Yes.
Even when he received all that enlightened information, within the Christian faith, there's the tree of life. There's that rebirth, that rejuvenation. There's so much symbolism that comes from all sorts of religious backgrounds connecting into the tree of life.
Yeah. You think
And
about the Kabbalah
yes,
and the tree of life in the Kabbalah. You think about the Norse traditions
yes, I was
and
just
they
going to
talk
bring that
about the
up.
world tree. Yeah. It's like, why is it that all of these paths, these spiritual paths and religious paths refer to a tree at some
Yeah.
point? Isn't that interesting?
Yes,
No matter
it's
where you are.
yeah, no matter where you're at, is because as you've been teaching with me with shamanism, you've been more so within the Incan shaman traditions and the Mayans as well, correct?
That's the Incan, yep,
Okay,
and
that's
Native
the Incan.
American. I usually
Okay,
mix the two.
yeah.
Mhm.
And as I've been loving what you've taught me with all of that and honoring that beauty, I've also been so drawn into the Norse mythology because I'm both of my ancestral line is from Norway. And even learning, and I've been reading some books and studying about that, is that regardless of where people were at in the world, the same teachings or very similar teachings were happening in just different places in different ways, but
Oh,
very
yes.
similar. And as we've looked into shamanism as well as, journey work with us in the tree, is it's very similar in that concept as well, is you go and discover different places within your internal self connected to this tree that
Mhm.
is so symbolic, and it connects even in with Norse mythology as
Mhm.
well as with the shamanic teachings that we've worked with within, Christianity and all the world religions. It's such a concrete thing that's literally everywhere. It's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, according to like shamanic cosmology, and this is what we talk about this during the classes that we do together, and I do with my students, where I'll say, I want you to visualize a wheel, a wheel that represents the directions, the east and the south and the west and north, above and below and center. And then I want you to visualize a huge tree in the middle of this sacred circle. And that is the tree of life. And that is those are the different dimensions that we explore, the lower, the middle, and the upper worlds. And that helps them understand like all these different areas in which we're going to be exploring as you go through your shamanic training. And we thought this was the great next step because, the last episode we talked about how to create sacred space and the importance of sacred ceremony. And when we talked about uh, why, the reason we wanted to really dive deep into what it means to create sacred space is because your sacred ceremonies will be so much more profound and powerful if you create sacred space, if you acknowledge the directions, if you acknowledge the support system that you have on the other side. You're not only able to align and center within yourself, but it's almost like gathering the forces all around you, gathering the troops of support that you have in
Yes.
order to manifest or to bring something into your life, a healing or a manifestation. And when we do the shamanic training, we talk about that. And then we talk about the tree of life. Because when you explore journey work, which is something we're going to be talking about too, you journey into these different levels. And how about we talk about first, before we dive into these different levels of the tree of life, how about we talk about the difference between visualization and meditation and journey work?
So when I got started working with you, Candace, I had a hard time being able to meditate. And it was something that I always conceptually thought was a really great idea. But realistically doing it, it was not, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't sit still. And it just felt like such a foreign concept, yet my spirit like yearned so much for
Yeah,
it.
you're drawn to it though. Yes.
Yeah. And so, starting out with when we started learning together, is we started out with the tube of light. And that took us like 25 minutes to really focus on the tube of light and allow that to be there. And then as we got started, is we would visualize this tube of light happening. And then all of a sudden, we would go into our sacred grove, which we'll talk about that as well. Is all of a sudden, it's like your spirit is experiencing something that's like soul connecting versus just visualizing. It's like your soul is in a different dimension, it's in a
Mm-hmm.
different realm, actually experiencing what it is that you're visualizing. And the thing that I love about journey work is a lot of people will go and will take like shrooms, or they'll do some kind of plant ceremony or plant medicine, and they might experiencing these higher planes of spiritual awareness. But what I love is through journey work and through breath work, we can achieve that space where we can be in an altered space or altered consciousness through journey work, which is
Yes.
so powerful because you remember everything that you experience because you're still fully here. But it's like you access this different part of your spirit's awareness that's like unlike anything else. I don't even know how else to explain it, but it's like
Yes.
so profound.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Because a lot of people, they're like, well, what is journey work? And I'm like, journey work is an out of body experience. You
Yes.
are leaving this realm or this dimension and you are entering other dimensions.
Yeah.
And that's why it has such an impact on you, because it's an experience. It's not just something you're imagining in your mind. And this
And
is what you learned, right?
Yeah. And for those who are like, what? How could you leave your body? Is your spirit is so much more vast
Oh,
than
yes.
this physical journey. And as we've discovered, your spirit is so much more than this meat suit that we're in right now. And knowing that we can connect into, you might have experienced where all of a sudden you feel connected to this higher being, or like you have all this inspiration, or maybe you're in the flow of connecting to your higher self. It's it's different, but at the same time, like if you think about it like that, you can connect into your higher self. Well, what is your higher self? It's endless possibility. There's so much out there that only saying that I can only have one way of connection really cheats you out from experiencing who your spirit truly is. And so journey
Hmm.
work is just another expression and exploring a different dimension of who it is that your spirit is and what it is that you
Yes.
came here to learn, or maybe that you've experienced in the past. And so don't cut yourself short from saying, well, I don't believe that, because there's so much to discover in that space, that you're actually more of a multidimensional being than you know. And to think that this is just the only thing that your spirit has ever learned or will ever learn is cutting yourself short of like divine intervention.
Yes, we are capable of experiencing so much.
Yes.
And one of the ways that I mean, this is the thing though, is meditation and visualization is the precursor. That is what helps you build that foundation where you can relax. Because one of the things is that we have out of body experiences. We can do it through ayahuasca journeys, peyote, other things like that. You can do it that way. And that kind of forces that upon you quicker. And what I've noticed is that it's not that there isn't a place for that, because people have to explore the things that work for them, right? But you don't have to. And one of the great things about doing it this way, where you're learning the foundational steps, where you're learning meditation and visualization, you're able to relax your body to a point where you can go into an altered state of consciousness. And then you work with a shaman or a medicine woman or man, and they help provide tools for you as you journey to heal certain things, to create permanent shifts, to help you process what you just experienced. It's like the change that happens in the long term over that route, it seems to have a more permanent healing shift on people. Because when you do ayahuasca, if you don't have the proper medicine woman or man to guide you through that process, to help you process what you experience, to help you really integrate the healing that you have been given, you can have this amazing, profound experience, but within 6 to 8 months, you could go back into old patterns because you weren't able to really process or fully integrate your
Yes.
experience. And so, and of course, people have this with near death experiences too. You have something happen, your body shuts down, the heartbeat stops, the brain functioning stops. You leave the body and you come back, which when that happens, that cord of connection to the body is still there. It hasn't been severed. This is what happens when you journey too. There is a cord. And a
Mhm.
lot of people, they don't recognize this cord connected to their physical body, but there is an actual energetic cord
Yeah.
that keeps you connected to your body.
I have seen that with people who are kind of in and out before they pass. Is it's like I see like this gold cord
Mm-hmm.
where, just like you have an umbilical cord,
Yep.
as a baby, it's the same concept from your spirit to your body. So someone could be
Totally.
maybe in a coma, or they could be kind of in and out, but they could be traveling or doing journey work or doing all these things, but haven't left themselves, which is also called like astro traveling. People do all kinds of stuff with that. It's like your spirit is still attached to this physical journey, this physical moment, but because we're so much more, we can explore a lot more than we realize.
Yes. And that's what I love, why I love doing this, because if people don't believe that there is an afterlife, that's fine. It will show you eventually anyway. I really don't care what anyone thinks. It's like And this is one of the great things about journeying is you get reminded of that. You are reminded of the vastness of who you are, of your multidimensional self, of the things that you are capable of experiencing. I mean, a lot of times when we do journey work, not only do we experience the lower, the middle, and the upper world, but we also do past life, we do future life, we do retrievals. There's all kinds of things that you do through journey work
Akashic
and
records.
the Akashic record journeys. And but at the same time, I wouldn't jump into those journeys immediately.
Right.
You know, I always, when working with someone, you build that solid foundation first so they can relax themselves to release the consciousness from their physical vehicle to be able to journey. And you'll always know when you're journeying, when all of a sudden what you're seeing has a life of its own. Things just happen. It's not from what I'm saying. It's not
Or
how I got you there,
or
or
even
I'll
you'll
say it after.
experience it. Yeah, or like I'll experience it before you mention it. And it's like, oh yeah,
And then
that's
I mention
there.
it and confirm
Yeah.
it. And that's why I always tell my students, it's like, if you see something and it starts to take on a life, your journey, and then I say it after, don't think that you need to go back and repeat that action. That is a confirmation to you
Yeah.
to let you know that you're on it. You're
Yeah.
on a journey. And so that is a big step. And it's always an exciting step for everyone who is going through that process. Like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing it I am leaving my body in a conscious way. And guess what? It's not that hard.
And I love it because in that space, you're also, when you first get started, when you introduced this to me, it was like, okay, connecting into your five senses once you're in the meadow. And it's the same five senses that we have here. It's just in spirit. And then there's more
Yes.
senses that we can experience with spirit as well. But it's really very simple in that concept is like, okay, what can you hear? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? What can you hear? What can you see? And it helps bring you into that moment so you can see things so much more clearly as you're moving forward. But it's just so profound. So, journey work is so beautiful, and meditation really, I feel like, helps people get centered and grounded into the moment. And breath work is such a huge tool in that space. Is I can literally feel like if you've ever gone to the dentist and you've had nitrous, I
Mm-hmm.
worked at a dentist and I know all the things about dentists, but yeah, I'm probably still one of the worst patients. It's so bizarre. But whenever I have to get work done, like it just is so
So
stressful
much
for me.
anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of like if someone who's experienced nitrous and they're like laying there and all of a sudden feels like they're just like floating and everything's spinning around them. You can experience that through breath work. You can
Mm-hmm.
experience that once getting into that meditative state or that journey work is you can experience those things without having it be induced. It's just practicing it and then not being afraid of it and then moving forward in
Yes.
that space. I remember when I first got started, I was like just spinning. Like I just felt like I was
Yes.
spinning so much. And now instead of being afraid of the spin, I can kind of embrace it more. And it's almost like when I embrace that, I feel like I receive more information because I'm not trying to control what's going on. I'm just releasing and surrendering. And a lot more healing work can be done when I'm not physically or mentally trying to control a spiritual concept that my mental mind can't even grasp.
Yes. And that energy of that rotation that you're feeling is that energy rising up the channels, rising up through the Kundalini. And that is a sensation that people feel right before they journey. And it's just that movement of energy moving through that life force energy, moving through the currents of the body and moving up the channels. And that's why it's like when you get advanced enough, you don't have to go through so many steps. You can focus on the breath and line up, and you'll start feeling that rotation. And I'll say,
Mhm.
feel it move up the spine and come out of the crown. And every time they come out of the crown, the rotation spin stops.
Yep.
And it's because they're hovering, their energy body is hovering above the body.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that's a natural feeling. I mean, when people meditate and they start feeling that rotation of energy, that is the rotation of energy moving up those energy currents or energy centers through the body.
Yeah. And one thing that I find very fascinating, and I'm a little bit worried to say this, but it's okay. I need to talk about it, is in scripture, a lot of old prophets talk about being taken away or being taken up on a
Mm-hmm.
mountaintop, or where they've received a lot of revelation, or maybe they're dreaming and they're taken up to a mountaintop, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, they use those words, I was taken up,
Yeah.
which
Ezekiel, Enoch. I think there was another one
there's so
too.
many. Yeah.
Mhm.
Where it's
They're
like,
all Eves.
I don't know the names of all. I should know that, but I don't. Is it still is talked about? It's like experienced in those ways. It might not be necessarily the same wording, but I believe that they also experience that as well, is where they're taken up into this higher consciousness to receive revelation, to receive this inspiration, to bring it back down.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Aquarian age, it's like we're learning that we have the ability to do those things for ourselves, reclaim those truths. So, journey work is
Yes.
so key in that area because it's really taking that power back. And there's nothing wrong with how they did that. And the wisdom they taught is so beautiful, but it's not any different than what they've experienced as well. I strongly believe is they did the same
I
thing that we can do.
strongly believe that. Yes, it's what we have access to. We can connect into higher states of consciousness. We have access to this because we are one with the divine.
Yes.
And so, and I noticed too, like before we do channeling work, you'll feel that spin, that
Yep.
rotation energy again. And then you'll leave the body. And then that's when the energy, at least for me, it's almost like I'm sitting on a bench
Yeah.
on the side of my body. And then my body becomes kind of inhabited by angelic realms like I communicate a lot with Pleiadian energy, with the Galactic Council. You and I both have had access to the Galactic Council.
Yeah.
And so I'll
It's
feel
really
that
cool.
energy coming in. It's almost like we're sharing a room,
Yep.
we're sharing space. But that rotation happens right before I start channeling because I'm raising the energy in and moving my energy over to the side and creating space for that to come in and to access my channel.
And it's the spiral, which is
Mm-hmm.
so symbolic for portal entrance. It's this
Yes.
opening up this portal. I find that every time I have a session, I always draw like an arrow pointing in, and then I do a portal entrance, and then I do an arrow pointing in, and I do it throughout the whole entire page. And I didn't necessarily understand
Wow.
why that was, but it like dawned on me. It's like my connection into this portal energy, inviting their connection in. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I literally can't start a session without having my paper set up that way. But
It's
it's
like you're
like,
opening up the gates.
yeah, yep, it is. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting how that spiral has so much symbolism, just like the tree, right? Just like the tree of
Mm-hmm.
life is, we are so symbolic in life, and there's so much spiritual symbolism in everything if we just look
Yes.
for it.
Yes. I love to study sacred geometry, and we could do a whole other
I haven't
episode on
even done
sacred
that yet.
geometry.
I need to study that
It's
more.
fun.
I feel
Yes.
like it's a little overwhelming, but maybe one day
Maybe
I'll take a bite
we'll
into
talk
that.
about that. That'll be season 3. Um, but anyway, let's talk about the tree of life now.
Yes.
I feel like now that we've talked about the difference between meditation and journey work, now we can talk about the tree of life because journeying is such a shamanic way of exploring this tree of life within us. I have to share this really quick. I went to a psychic medium months ago. I think it was like the early part of summer.
Oh,
I told you
yes.
about him, that man
Yes.
I went. He was so good. And one of the first things that he saw as I sat down, he's like, you know what? I'm seeing this huge oak tree. And there is this falcon flying around this oak tree and landing on the branches. And then it'll swoop down the side of my head and they'll come around the room and go by you. And then it'll go land on these branches. He goes, but it's like in the middle of your body. It's almost like you are the tree or at another lifetime or another dimension. He's like, does this make sense? Because this makes no sense to me. I was like, yes, this makes total sense to me. Because as a shaman, that is, so powerful. It is the tree where I explore my multidimensional self. And that is what it symbolizes, is your
Yeah.
multidimensional self. And it was funny because even as he was connecting in with the tree, his voice slow. He's like, I had to talk really slow when I connect in with it. And I thought that was so interesting too, just because of my experiences with trees in general, and connecting in with their energy. So anyway, I just thought I would share that little story because here's a person who knows nothing about me.
Yeah.
You know, I just came up, it's like, oh, I think I'm gonna get a reading. Why not? You know, and then that first thing he mentions was this tree of life. You know,
So
so I
powerful.
carry this in my energetic body, and other seers can see that and they can recognize that. And other shamans would know if they saw that tree that that represents a medicine man or a medicine woman, and their, you know, exploration into this tree of life within themselves. But someone who's not a shaman wouldn't know what that is.
Yeah. It's so
But you carry that.
interesting because growing up, my mom is one who, if anyone knows my mom, she's all about the tree of life. And she always talks about the tree of life. She talks about the knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as well as the tree of life, and how it's like a different frequency or a different vibration when you're living in the tree of life or you're leaning upon that versus like right and wrong, good and bad. It's like knowing that you're so much more. And so I just think it's hilarious that she's always been so connected. Like in her house, she has so many different trees of life, like symbolism everywhere. So I just think
Mm.
it's hilarious that we're even talking about this in this space too,
Oh,
because
it's so perfect.
it's so who she like just naturally has always been distilled within me because she's so big into it. I love
And
it.
they'll say that you'll know someone by their fruits.
Yeah.
And when a person creates balance in their lives, and they've done a lot of healing and they're coming from that heart place, that place of love, they naturally manifest abundance in their lives. And abundance is not just financial, abundance is opportunity, beauty, arts. They have this way of drawing these beautiful experiences to their lives. And they have families that are supportive, and they have friendships, long lasting relationships and friendships. It's almost like they're constantly creating and building things, and things flourish in their field, in their energetic field. And so it's also something to recognize, like when you look at people and in their lives, including your teachers, you know, it's like, what are the fruits that they are creating in their life? You know, are they creating abundance? Are they creating healing? What are the words that they speak? You know, are they centered in love, or are they centered in fear?
Right.
You know? So anyway, it
Yeah.
was just something that came to my mind too, because when we talk about the tree of life in Christianity, they talk about the fruit. They talk
Yes.
about that fruit, and that fruit of enlightenment, the fruit of abundance, the fruit of love, of Christ consciousness in your life, and what that creates. And they're like, you'll know people by their
Their fruit.
fruits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I love it.
So, yes. So, when we start working with people, we always start with the middle world, because the tree of life represents the lower, the middle, and the upper. And you think about, you know, the roots of the tree, and that goes down into the lower world. And you think about the trunk or the middle part of the tree, which is the middle world, and the branches that reach up to the sky and are kissed by the sun's rays are the upper world aspect of you. And so when we do shamanic journeying, we always start with the middle world first. And this is where I call it gathering your troops, where you gather who is assisting you on this journey on the other side of the veil. It's the place where you meet with your animal allies, with your spirit guides, where you visit your ancestors, and you access your totem, where you can go to the sacred gardens and meet with those who have passed on the other side. And then you can start exploring some of the upper world stuff through the Akashic records and the secret garden. We dabble into just a little bit when we go into the middle world. And then we also dabble into connecting with your Heavenly Mother Father aspect, so you can feel that connection with them as well. So there's another awesome journey you can do in the middle world. If you say journey to the cottage, there
Yeah.
is a garden that is in the back of the cottage where this, when you look at the garden, it will give you a lot of insight about what is going on with you energetically.
Right.
It's a place where you can do energy work on yourself. And it could be symbolically look like, just picking out weeds or trimming branches or this and that. But symbolically, what that garden represents in the back of the cottage is your energy body.
Yeah, it's like this landscape. If you could think of like a
Mm-hmm.
landscape where, there's this huge tree where everything is kind of connected into that grove where the tree is at. And it's this landscape that
Yes.
you go and explore, where you can go to explore all of those spaces. And
Yeah. And the shamans call it the inner landscape.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually what they call it in that middle world.
yeah. And it's like where you can explore yourself. I've done a lot of ancestral healing there, is allowing, like, it's like I've done some journey work where maybe I'd go to the garden where maybe I was holding on to ancestral stuff that wasn't for me, and so we would weed that out together, or we would call upon our higher guides, call upon Christ, call upon these higher teachers to help relieve that stress and give that back, or to take that off of my space. And so you can do so many amazing different journey works there in the middle world that are so
Mm-hmm.
profound. It's so beautiful.
And a lot of people, they don't realize that in that middle world space is where you can also connect with individuals who are in a body right now. So people that,
Yes.
like, for example, what I'll do, there's a journey to the cottage where you can meet with people that maybe you're having some struggles with. And what I'll do is I'll sit on the front porch of this cottage and I'll invite their soul to come visit with me. And I will talk to them on a soul level. I'll say, these are the things that I'm struggling with. I really, I would, I bless you and I ask that you open your heart, that you see maybe things from different perspectives, or this is what I would hope for us in our relationship. But I'll really talk to them on a soul heart level on that
Yeah.
at that cottage again and again and again, Jenn. What will happen is that individual will come to me to resolve the issue or have the conversation. And in the past, I've always been the one trying to be the peacemaker.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to get along. And I try to fix things, which is very codependent of me. And I've really done a lot of work on healing that. What I've noticed is that when I started doing this middle world journeying to the cottage and working with people on a soul level, that reversed literally in my marriage and other relationships, where all of a sudden they would come to me, or all of a sudden say, what, I've been thinking about what you said. And I feel like I'm getting a better understanding of what you're saying. That really opened my heart. And I want you to know I love you. Or like things that I never thought in a million years that they would
Yeah.
ever say.
And it's
They
not like
do.
it's not like you're crossing someone's boundary and doing that. It's that
Mm-mm.
you're just saying, hey, my soul wants to speak to your soul, whatever it needs and whatever will be the most beneficial for you. I open that
Yes.
space up. It's like not a form of manipulation at all. It's a space
It's
of like
not.
authentic truth, and
Yes.
then not expecting an outcome, but just allowing your spirit to speak to their spirit. I feel like it's that concept of surrender, because when you surrender, beauty happens.
Yeah. And on a soul level, we're not carrying all the stories and we're not
Yeah.
carrying all this baggage. You're able to really connect with the true essence of someone's energy.
Yes.
And that's so healing too, because it's like when you connect with someone's energy on a soul level, it reminds you again of who they really are and helps you open your heart, your compassion, your understanding, your love.
Absolutely.
So you're so right. It's not manipulative. It's very centered in love. And I don't say, hey, this is what I don't do a spell and say, this is
Yeah.
what's going to happen and enforce my will. I just say, can you please open your heart into
Absolutely.
feeling into where I'm coming from, or know that I love you and know that I'm here for you. So it's a very different level of work that we have that available, and people don't even realize that you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I also love in the middle world. One of my favorites that I go to all the time is meeting with your spirit totems, spirit animals. I think we'll have to
Yes.
do a whole podcast on this because our spirit animals can bring so many amazing messages to us. I always have
Mhm.
this moose that's always there with me, and the moose is very symbolic for who I am in my life. But when I'm seeking guidance or when I need a little support, um, I'll go to the grove and I'll see what animals are there. And depending upon what animals show up, we have this amazing book that's called Animal Speak. We'll have to do a whole thing on animals, I feel like, but it gives
Mhm.
me guidance or understanding, or it helps me receive information depending upon what animals show up. And even as
Yes.
we were speaking today, I was kind of in my space as you're talking about the branches, and I like see this little squirrel and mine just hanging out right now. And so I'm like, oh, I need to look into that to see what this little squirrel is wanting because I haven't seen him in my tree before. And so it's always fun to just see what animals also come up and the healing that they bring in as well. And I have found time and time again that my moose that comes with me is when I go in to do maybe lower world journeys or healings, is that moose is
Ooh,
always there with me to just be right by me, um, to
wow.
give that strength as well. And mooses are so symbolic. I could go on and on about animals, so I'm
Yes.
not going to. You know, Mother Earth has given us all kinds of signs and symbols and answers. And so your animals, spirit animals, can just be a part of that as well.
I love how you mentioned that, because once you get really connected in to your spirit animals, you start becoming hyper aware of the different animals that are coming into your environment, because you recognize that everything is symbolic and that spirit
Yes,
is communicating to you all of the time. So that is one of the beautiful gifts that that gives you, because it not only makes you aware of who's assisting you on the other side of the veil, but also it makes you hyper aware of your support system here,
physically, they'll show up
physically
for you.
too.
Yeah, they'll show
Mm-hmm.
up for you. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing like a grasshopper, like an extremely large amount, it's like, okay, well, what's the reasoning or what's the message behind the grasshopper? And you can find that out and be like,
Yes.
okay, I hear you. I got it. I'm
Yeah.
clear.
And how spirit would communicate with me is it comes in threes.
Mm.
It's kind of like that confirmation. If something repeats, whether it be a commercial, I see it in my road, or I see it this or that, or it comes up in a movie, like it'll just keep repeating. And I'm like, okay, okay, I need to go look it up and I need to gather my information and support. And it always is perfect. It's
Yeah.
always exactly what I need to hear, exactly the energy that I need to feel supported by. So yeah, it is such a powerful. It's like we
So
could go on and on
beautiful.
about these journeys. And what I love that you mentioned about the moose is that you take your moose to the lower world. So let's talk about what the lower world represents.
Well, I think that people automatically hearing the lower world are like we're
Yeah.
going down under in the
Yeah.
heaviness, in the darkness, which the lower world, you access it through the trunk. You can go down, and one aspect of it is understanding your inner child. Is, sometimes it will show up differently. I remember for a while when I would go into where my lower world is and do some inner child work, it was a mini golf course where I would go
Mm.
mini golfing with my little self, my little Jenny, and we would talk throughout the time of mini golf. And then it transitioned at one point too to being more of like this fairy realm where it was like this woodsland feel where I could sit with my little girl or I could sit with these fairy energies that were there. And it was so healing for me. And as a little girl, I had always talked about fairies. It was like I had fairies guiding me and teaching me. And I see that it was like my way of connecting into my spiritual gifts as a little girl that was safe for me. And so when I'm feeling extra worried or so, going down to that lower portion is like going in to do that inner child work. But for me, it hasn't always been this scary heaviness. It's been like, hey, let's go golfing, little Jenny,
Mm-hmm.
or let's sit with the fairies who you were so comfortable with. Instead of it having to be this heavy thing all of the time, it was very healing in a playful way, which is exactly what
Yes,
child energy is so playful.
it is. It's almost like a reclamation of your inner child. It's like when you journey to the lower world, it's almost like you're reclaiming parts of yourself that needed healing, but also the joy, the
Yeah.
playfulness, the magic, all those things that a child carries within them. And we forget, as we get older, we become domesticated, we become disconnected into that inner child within us, that purity, that playfulness, that creativity.
And a lot of
Um,
it comes home. A lot of it is
mhm.
maybe what you've explored as a child as well. I did a soul retrieval with someone. And before we went down, I was like, okay, and this is where we had worked up to that, but I was like, this is where that you would do like inner child work in this space. And it was kind of like to the left here is where you could do this. And
Yes.
she was like, I've been here. I know this place. Like, I
Yes.
know this. And she didn't physically, like in her physical head as an adult, she didn't know it, but she's like, I've been here as a kid. Like, I know this place. And so it
Mhm.
was so cool to see how that ignited within her, even though she wasn't aware of it as an adult. It was her childhood and she experienced it as a child. I thought it was so beautiful.
Wow. I had a really interesting experience with one of my students who went to the lower world, and she ended up accessing a former lifetime
Interesting.
that had an energetic influence on her as a child, which ended up influencing her as an adult. It had this ripple effect. And that was so fascinating. I had never experienced that in a lower world journey, but that is possible. That is a possible thing. It's like anything that is keeping us from being heart centered. It's those wounds or those beliefs or ideas too. A lot of times those will be found within the lower world, because it's like once you're able to remove that and really reclaim that inner child in you, which I feel is in the heart, that is the gateway. It reminds me of the scripture that the Lord said, you must become a child to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
This is why I have people explore the lower world before we go into the upper world journeys, because I feel like there is an innocence, a reclamation of this inner child and this healing that needs to be done. And then once you do that, then it's easy. The access is easy to go into the upper realms. So,
Well,
and
and
you do soul retrieval too in the lower world. We call that an underworld journey.
yes.
Um, but that is life changing, because you're retrieving those aspects of yourself that you pushed away because of trauma or something that had happened, and again and again. And so it's like that reclaiming of that within yourself comes into this, you come into a more full expression of who you are, and you become recentered in that heart space.
Yeah. If you could imagine a tree, it stems from your heart. And it's like that's so symbolic if you think about like the trunk is where our heart is at. And for those who are into chakras, right, we have the top three. Our heart is like the bridge to the bottom three. And it's that same
Mm-hmm.
concept with the tree is like if you can imagine the heart is like the trunk there. The lower could be the lower three, where the upper three or the the branches are connected into that divine spirituality. It's that divine inner knowing. And so it's so symbolic in everything. But as you're speaking, it was like I could see that tree like just even in the brain, how it has like all these different nerves and all these different things, like in the whole body, like it just is so it goes into the sacred geometry. It's everywhere, right? It's like just spread out everywhere, just like the roots of a tree, the branches of a tree. It's or even when you look at a tree trunk, how it has so much diversion and all of that. It's like so symbolic to even our physical bodies and our spiritual
Oh,
self,
and our
all of
energy
it.
bodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I even, as you were talking about, we are thinking about the chakras and what we understand about the chakras
Uh-huh.
and how energy moves in these energy centers. That's so true. Like if seeing the heart chakra being the trunk of the tree and the lower being more of like the roots
Mm-hmm.
and the branches being the upper parts of the chakras. Well, even like as you journey the lower world, what you learn about energy work is that when you clear out blocks that are in the solar plexus, the sacral chakra, and the root chakra, the upper three chakras become energetically open as well. Because a lot of times, if you have a closed third eye, it's because, well, there may be something going on within the sacral chakra, because your third eye and your sacral chakra work in partnership. Your root chakra works in partnership with your crown chakra. Your solar plexus works in relationship with your throat chakra. So when you explore these lower chakras and you're able to clear out those things that make you feel unworthy or powerless, or you're addressing sexual issues and your ideas around sexuality and your emotions, or you're going around issues of safety and abundance and finances and family and ancestors, and you're journeying all through this lower stuff, and then your heart becomes more open, and then all of a sudden the upper chakras start to clear out and start to open up more, that's when it's time to start journeying those upper realms,
Yes.
because all that foundational stuff has been prepared, has been cleared out, and now you've got this solid foundation. Your roots run deep, and now
Yes.
you've got that solid energy, and now you can move up the chakras and move into the higher realms in a grounded and centered way,
Right.
right? In a healthy way.
In a healthy way, absolutely. Which I think is so important because people get so worried about losing themselves, or exploring spirituality is like losing who they are, not fully coming back down. And so being centered and healing these things in the proper forms is so important because of
It
that.
really is. Like
Yeah.
you can recognize certain people who they're super gifted spiritually, but they're very ungrounded.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're kind of up in the clouds,
Yeah. And it can
you
be
know?
easy to want to stay in that space. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
doing extra stuff to stay grounded.
Yes.
Because
And
I
when
could
you do
easily fall
this,
there if I wanted, but it's like, no, I got to be here. I got to be physical. I'm
you
here,
got to
you
be
know?
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also when you explore that lower middle world, you have tools. You have more tools to help you access that, to help you stay more grounded and centered, to do your work, to be here, to be human, to work with your ancestors, to work with your animals, all the things that are here.
Yeah.
And then when you do access that, you find that your channel is way more clear. You get more accurate information.
Right.
Um, you're able to access things that really make a difference in your life or in the lives of others.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the upper world journeys are so amazing, because we were talking about a little bit of it in the middle world, where you can kind of dabble into some upper world stuff by journeying the Akashic records. And this is a place where you can explore your contracts, the contracts that you've made with yourself in this life to that you wanted to experience, and also your contracts between the individuals in your life. Like, what are the contracts between my husband and I? Or what are my contracts between my children and I, or my parents or friends? Or in the Akashic records, you can find all of that.
Yeah. I feel like the Akashic Records is just wisdom of the universe endlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Forever in the past, forever in the future, you can access all of it. It's with the proper intention in that space
Yes.
too. But it's so beautiful. As well as in the upper realm, you can communicate with the High Council and the galactic
Yes.
family, all of those higher beings of teaching, of moving forward, is that wisdom is all there for us.
Yeah. A lot of people feel that they have to die. They have to leave this world. Really, I don't even believe in death. I
Yeah.
really don't. But they have to release this body in order to go spend time with Jesus, or to spend time with Mother Mary or Buddha or Krishna or Heavenly Father, Mother, Creator, Source. I'm here to tell you, you don't have to. I mean,
Yeah.
when you learn how to relax yourself and go into these altered states of consciousness, you can go spend time with them now. You can go sit with them. You can go be with their energy, allow them to communicate with you. You can experience miraculous healings in your lives. in your life. You have access to so much. And people forget that. They get lost in this world of Maya, the world of dreams, and they forget who they are and how interconnected you are, what you have access to, what you can do. And
Yeah.
you don't have to leave this body. Well, you do a little bit, you still have the core connected, but you know what I'm saying? You don't have to shed the body and die
Right.
and go into those places, because it's part of who you are. It's part of who you are. And a lot of people forget that until they cross over or have an NDE and near death experience. And then they come back and they share their stories. But you don't have to do that in order to feel that today, to go spend time with the
Absolutely.
angels or the Galactic Council or the Lord. You can do it today.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. And you can receive that information and surrender and let that be as healing as it is. You know, um within a Reiki retreat that you did, one of the women, we were in the sacred garden and she was communicating with her Lord, you know, and it was such a powerful experience for her. And after, she's like,
Yes.
I never thought I could experience that here. And it was soul changing. It was so profound. And it was so beautiful to see her witness that. And even,
Yes.
you know, when I went to the Akashic Records with you, I had such an amazing experience understanding who God is. And it was totally different than what I ever imagined it to be. But it was like I was laying down and you were walking me to the Akashic Records. And then you kind of were like, okay, take it from here, Spirit, like lead her to where she needs to go. And I just felt like I've never felt so much love in my entire life. Like my whole body was pulsing to my fingertips, to my stomach, like my eyelids. Like it was so much bright light and so much love that I was trying to put a figure, I was trying to put this block on who God was. And I was just told, no, don't put a block. Just let me show you.
Show you.
And it was so
Yes.
beautiful. And it was something that I was so grateful for. And it changed who I was and who I am. And
Yes.
that's the power of journey work. That's the power of exploring the tree, of reclaiming that wisdom, is that you can have that divine healing. You can communicate with your high council. You can communicate with your ancestors. You can go and have this special time with your inner child. There's so much self discovery. And this goes back to, we are such a multidimensional being. And multidimensional means there's different dimensions in which we are, in which we who we are, what we explore, what we experience. And knowing that we have access to that is so beautiful. And it's so changing. It changes everything about you if you allow it to.
Yes. That's what I loved about journey work, because it gets you out of the concepts. Like we have so many sacred texts here. We have so many roadmaps
Yes.
from our ancestors. We have the Bible, we have the Bhagavad Gita, we have all of these amazing books that help us as roadmaps here about on this human journey. But when you read it, it's kind of a mental concept, and sometimes you'll get a feeling or a download. What I loved about the journey, it became an experience. It wasn't something that was just here. And it's like, I know this to be true, right?
Right.
When I did journey, I got to know it to be true by feeling it, experiencing it, and being there. And it deepened my testimony of spirit, of the afterlife, of who I am. It brought it all together, because I'm stubborn. I don't want to just be told that something is right.
Yes. Me too.
Right. I want to have a personal experience. I want to